Hello, and welcome to Radio Free America.
Truth unleashed, no chains in sight. Radio Free America, ignite the night.
I'm your host, MC, and in this project, we will explore how the U.S. empire, through both covert and overt CIA propaganda campaigns, projects its own misdeeds onto its adversaries. From espionage and election meddling to human rights abuses and economic sabotage, we'll uncover the truth behind the headlines and reveal how narratives are crafted to serve American interests. Join us as we dissect historical events, analyze contemporary issues, and navigate the murky waters of disinformation to expose the truth, one episode at a time. We'll focus specifically on the People's Republic of China and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or North Korea, as it's erroneously called in the West. Why those two countries? Simple. They are the two most lied about nations, perhaps in the history of the world, but at the very least, in modern times. The only entity that could hold a candle to them in this regard is the Soviet Union, and funnily enough, the lies the US spread about the USSR during the Cold War played a major role in its eventual illegal dissolution. But alas, we're focusing on actually existing socialist nations in this project, and the USSR no longer exists. The name Radio Free America is a reference to Radio Free Europe and Radio Free Asia, both of which were initiatives originally started by the CIA during the Cold War. Their goal? To broadcast propaganda about America's communist enemies worldwide, painting them as the ultimate threat to freedom and democracy. But here at Radio Free America, we don't need to lie to propagandize against the US empire. Instead of spreading disinformation, we'll expose the truth. This project aims to turn the tables by shining a light on America's own questionable activities and double standards. Each episode will delve into how the US has used propaganda, often through CIA-backed or funded operations, to accuse its enemies of the very same atrocities it's personally guilty of. We'll explore covert operations, election meddling, human rights violations, economic manipulation, and more. Our goal is to break down these complex issues and reveal how these tactics are used to shape public perception in the imperial core, and for the US empire to maintain power. Allow me to be frank. The US empire is the Fourth Reich. They've done a Lebensraum that the Nazis could have only ever dreamed of, militarily occupying about 80% of the countries in the world. They haven't fought for a noble cause since the end of World War II. They've been the bad guys in every single modern conflict, and they're responsible for killing millions upon millions of civilians in, to name just a few of the most egregious examples, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the misappropriately named War on Terror. They operate concentration camps and torture facilities, both right now and historically. They have perpetrated or supported countless genocides. They foment death and destruction across the world while claiming to be spreading quote-unquote democracy and quote-unquote freedom. But for whom? In 1947, shortly after the end of World War II, the US created the Central Intelligence Agency, with a mission to gather intel on their communist enemies to spread propaganda and conduct covert operations against them. The CIA quickly became a key instrument of American foreign policy, engaging in activities ranging from espionage to regime change. Its covert operations aimed to undermine governments deemed hostile to U.S. interests, while supporting any regime that aligned with American economic and strategic goals, or at least could be forced to, no matter what atrocities said regimes committed. One of the CIA's earliest initiatives was the establishment of Radio Free Europe, RFE, and Radio Free Asia, RFA. They began as radio stations broadcasting anti-communist propaganda to Eastern Europe and Asia, respectively, falsely painting the Soviet Union, China, and the DPRK, among other enemies of capitalism, of course, as oppressive regimes. These broadcasts were designed to sway public opinion and create dissent against communist governments and their leaders. RFA and RFE were eventually repurposed and transformed into their modern iterations, that being State Department-funded online news organizations that almost exclusively use anonymous sources to propagandize against communist nations. Well, prior to President Trump and Shadow President Musk defunding them, of course. Unfortunately, the propaganda spread by these entities over the last several decades still remains, as the internet is written in ink, not with a pencil. Radio Free Asia, along with other organizations that anti-imperialists commonly refer to as CIA cutouts, will be a specific focus for this project as we highlight their efforts towards destabilizing the DPRK and China. We will deconstruct the propaganda method of the United States, proving that these overt operations are simply a tool to spread soft power and to attempt to create a worldwide capitalist hegemony, the U.S. empire. The American government has convinced the Western world that the regime change operations they often openly admit to funding or perpetrating are justified, as long as they do it under the guise of spreading quote-unquote democracy, with whatever warped definition the empire appends to that term. Most, or at least many, people living in the imperial core understand that the US spreads propaganda about their enemies, but they have no idea of the extent of it. They don't know that almost everything they've heard about the DPRK and China came straight from the CIA. This is not an exaggeration by any sense of the word. If you're interested to see how deep the rabbit hole goes, I implore you to follow this project. It will be an eye-opening experience, and will certainly make you question everything that you hear about the enemies of capitalism. As we move through the episodes of Radio Free America, we'll delve deeper into these topics, exploring specific examples of U.S. imperialism, covert operations, and propaganda campaigns. We'll uncover how these efforts have shaped the world we live in today, and reveal the double standards that underpin American foreign policy. This is Radio Free America. Tune in